My name is Lawrence Ray, also known as Pt.3, and we are back with part 3 of the home buying process. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to be alerted for any uploads. To be clear, like always, I am not a real estate agent. For any questions specific to your situation, please consult with a professional. Let's jump back in. Step 5 of the home buying process, picking a dream home. Now, there is no right answer to this question, as my dream home may not be your dream home. The best general advice I can give you is don't go blindly shopping for a home, because if you don't know what you want, everything looks great. Have a list of non-negotiables that you want for your home, whether that's a certain number of rooms, square footage, updated cabinets and appliances, whatever is important for you. Just make sure you have the right information to determine your non-negotiables. I'll break down at a few of the more common ones that I hear. Number 1, number of rooms. Now, a key tip for people whose focus is number of rooms, make sure you are fine with the true size of the room, as not all rooms are created equal. Now, by law, there are a few requirements to consider a space or room. Number 1 is entrance. A bedroom needs at least 2 methods to escape. Usually that's done with a door and a window. Number 2 is ceiling height. At least 50% of the ceiling needs to be at minimum 7 feet. Now, most ceilings are built at 8 feet, so this isn't a common issue that you'll run into, but technically to consider a space or room, it is supposed to be 7 feet. Now, you may be surprised with this, but closets are not a requirement to consider a space or room. So you do not have to have a closet for it to be considered a room. Lastly though, this is important for my people who do have rooms on their non-negotiable. It is minimum bedroom size. Now, this varies from state to state, so please consult with a professional to make sure the requirements in your area. But generally speaking, 70 to 80 square footage is the minimum requirement to consider a space or room. Now, for reference, the inside of a small car is about 45.2 square feet. A truck on average is about 54 square feet. So even if you may have a spacious car, I don't know if you would want it to be the size of your bedroom. So you may be wondering, why would someone make a bunch of small rooms instead of just having a few big ones? And to that I say, we both know the answer. Money. On average, an extra bedroom adds 30 to 50K to a potential resale of a home. So when it comes to number of rooms, the best advice I can give you is this going to be your forever home, or is this just your right now home? Now again, as I stated, there is no wrong answer to what you decide, as my dream home may not be your dream home. But what I would say, if this is just your right now home, then you may take those smaller bedrooms because of the investment potential the number of rooms present down the line. Now, if this is your forever home, then you may prioritize the right amount of space. That may be more important than the actual number of rooms. It doesn't matter if 3 bedrooms on average resell less than 5 bedrooms if you don't plan to sell it anyways. So keep that in mind if the number of rooms are on your non-negotiables. Number 2 on this list, and it may be the most important one, because I do see a lot of people who make their home buying decision based off of this. It is square footage. Now hear me clearly when I say this. Please do not confuse the square footage of the property itself with its true living space. Let me explain. Now, my people who have been home searching and going to look at properties, you might relate to what I'm about to say. Have you ever looked at a property online and it's listed to have a great amount of square footage, and it makes you want to go see the property? And then when you get there, you start looking around inside and you're like, man, it is small in here. And that is because the true living space is not the same as the square footage itself. Let's explain what is required to be included in square footage. Now, the minimum requirements to be included in the square footage of a home is flooring, wall covering, ceiling, and the ability to be lived in 365 days a year. Now, please consult with a professional if you have concerns with the square footage being reported, as there is a lot of gray area into what can and cannot be considered into the square footage of a home. We will discuss some of the more common questions related to square footage real quick though. Now, some of the common questions we have when it comes to square footage. One I hear a lot is, does a basement count? That depends on where you live. Again, we already discussed there is a lot of gray area. Consult with professionals. But generally speaking, if you have a basement that has a finished floor, it has a wall covering so there are no exposed wires, and it has a ceiling, technically, yes, it can count into the square footage. Another question I get, do stairwells and closets count? Again, depending on where you live, it does. Now, of course, that goes back to what we were discussing about actual living space. You don't live on the stairs. You don't live in the closets. But when it comes to square footage, they can list it as square footage towards the home. Again, another question I hear is, does a garage count? We already discussed those minimum requirements. If it meets those minimum requirements, yes, they can include the garage into the square footage of a home. So there is a lot of things that can be added in to a square footage of a home, but those places that can be added in to make the house look bigger is not actually the true living space that you would be in. So again, don't fall in love necessarily with the square footage you see. Make sure you understand the true living space of that home. Now, for this next step, let me say again, I am not a real estate agent, and I would stress to you, any concerns, you should consult with a professional. But the next question I got was, how do you calculate the square footage? From speaking with agents, they told me they usually start by measuring the outside base of a house. Using that, they can calculate the total square footage. Now, of course, if it's a 2-story home, they would usually double that number to get the total square footage for both levels. Usually they do that by deducting any space that is still unfinished, because if it doesn't meet the minimum requirements, as we stated before, it cannot be included in the square footage. Now, some agents have told me they use past MLS listings. Now, of course, that's not the most reliable option, because if you're just going off what was previously reported, somebody could have made home improvements, such as maybe they finished that basement, or for whatever reason, now that square footage could be being over-reported. Like, let's say somebody started a home improvement project they didn't finish, but they took down a wall. Now it does not have that wall covering, so it no longer is considered the square footage towards the house. So going off the past reported isn't always the best option, because either it could have went up or it could have went down. Now, if you're unsure which one of those methods would use to calculate the square footage of a home you're considering, you are well within your right to just ask the listing agent how exactly they calculated the square footage, and you're able to verify that on your own. Now, you may be wondering, why do people try to include as much square footage as possible when selling a home? And my answer, like always, is money. On average, adding extra footage to a home can add $80 to $200 per square foot, which adds up very quickly. So my tip related to square footage, don't fall in love with the big number. Focus on the true living space inside of that square footage, which could be a lot lower than you thought. Now, another important factor to consider is, should you buy a new or a used home? Now, there's pros and cons to both, of course. The pros of a new construction home is personalization. If you build a home from the ground up, you could work with the builder to customize the home to exactly what you may want. As well as on new construction homes, usually they'll have a modern floor plan. The new homes will usually follow the modern trends, unless of course customized differently by that owner. Efficiency. Usually new constructions are built with more energy efficient devices that may not have even been available on an older home, which could save you money in the long run. Downsides of a new construction. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think of a downside of a new construction would be waiting. The time aspect may not be as important to some as it is to others, but some people may not have the time to wait for the home to be built. Me personally, this was the case. Now, I did buy a new construction, but I did not personalize it because I didn't have 6 months to wait for the house to be built. At that time, I was living in New Orleans and my lease was coming up, and I didn't want to sign a new lease. So if I bought a house that was ready to go, I wouldn't need to. But if I did decide to build the house, I would have had to stay there longer, which would have forced me to sign a new lease, which would have required me to break it later on, which would have added more headaches to it. So I decided not to go that route, especially when there was already a house ready to go that I liked anyway. I just went ahead and went with the new construction that was already built. So this is something, if you don't have the time to wait, this is a downside that would be valid. Another big concern I hear from people is related to the landscaping on a new construction. Now keep in mind, if you're a big yard person, when you buy a house new, sometimes it takes time for the grass to come in depending on how soon you move in after it's done. Again, when I bought my home, they literally were finishing the house the morning we were signing the paperwork, so my backyard didn't look the best when I first moved in. Now, to be fair, the grass did grow in pretty quickly, but for the people who really like getting out in that backyard, that may be a valid concern of theirs, that they don't want to wait for their backyard to look like they want it to look. So landscaping is a downside sometimes related to your specific home you may be choosing. Another concern I'm hearing a lot is related to the spaces between houses nowadays. I hear people saying that houses are getting built on top of each other. Now this one, I don't know if it's really just tied to a new construction home, or is it more tied to where you're choosing to live at? Because if you decide to live out in a more rural area, then you may be more spaced out than you would be if you decided to live right in the city. I do hear people say that, you know, back in the day, older homes had bigger backyards than maybe the new constructions are providing. And again, that may be true depending on where you're choosing to live at. Talk with your agent and find out all options available. If you prefer to be spaced out more, you could still probably get a new construction, but maybe you don't need that new construction in a city setting. Maybe you need to go further out more into more of a country setting. So I don't know if this is a downside of just new constructions, or it's more of a downside of the area that you want to live in. So that's something to consider as well. Again, consult with a professional related to the space concern. Now, before I give my opinion related to the cost of a new construction home, I will again state and stress, please do not buy a house that you cannot afford. That is first and foremost. Now, what I would say though is, being that we are in a seller's market, keep in mind anything you decide to buy is likely going to be bought at a premium price. Whether that is an older home or whether that's a new construction home, whatever you decide to buy is likely going to cost you. Now, I will stress again, this is not me telling you to purchase a house above your means. Please do not do that. As well as, this goes back to, is this gonna be your forever home or your right now home? If it's just gonna be your right now home, then maybe the price will impact what you decide to do, because you don't plan to be there forever. But if this is gonna be your forever home, don't shortchange yourself. Especially if you can afford both houses comfortably, then put the money a little bit aside and decide what you really want in your home. And if what you want in your home can be done with the cheaper house, then by all means, get the cheaper house. But if what you really want can only be provided to you with a new construction home, I will tell you, in my opinion, and it's strictly my opinion, go ahead and get the new construction and get what you really want if you plan to be there for a long time. Now, whatever we decided our dream home to be, whether that was a new construction in the heart of the city or an older home in a rural area, on the next video we will discuss appraisals and inspections as we move deeper and deeper into the home buying process. Make sure to like this video and share with others who are also going through their own journey as we walk step by step through the home buying process.